Okay, Tabitha Letterman.
We're ready. All right, good evening. Welcome and thank you for joining us for our Zone 5 Town Hall meeting. We are ready to answer your questions and share information you might need to know about crime data, our work in your community, and our plan to tackle issues in your zone. We have a list of questions that some have already submitted, and time permitting, we will take a few more questions once these are answered. We will start by introducing your Zone 5 commanders, Major Prenzina Span and Captain Antonio Clay. Captain Clay is not with us tonight, though. Next, we will introduce members of the department's executive command staff, Chief Rodney Bryant, Assistant Chief Todd Coit, Field Operations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Timothy Peak. We have Community Services Division Commander, Major Eddie Smith, Criminal Investigations Division Commander, Major William Ricker, Strategies and Special Projects Division Commander, Deputy Chief Darren Shearbaum, Support Services Division Commander, Deputy Chief Stacy Gibbs. Not with us tonight is Contingency Operations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Michael O'Connor, Director of Public Affairs, Shada Spikes, our Office of Professional Standards, Major Maurice Bates, and Chief of Staff, Major Andrea Webster. We want to thank those of you who submitted questions. All of the questions will be read and answered here tonight, unless the issue is a duplicate question or is related to an ongoing investigation. Anything that cannot be answered this evening will be noted, and one of the commanders will follow up with you with a response. If you have something to ask or say during the event, please raise your hand or send the comment to the chat box, and we will get to you if time permits. Our goal is to have a helpful and meaningful conversation that provides pertinent information and hopefully responds adequately to your concerns. SPO Tashina Brown with our Public Affairs Unit will begin reading the first question.
Will wants to know, how are you incentivizing your officers to engage and be more proactive in crime deterrence without fear of retaliation from public officials, or command staff?
Thank you, Will, for the questions. I don't know if we are incentivizing more so than recognizing our officers and educating them on what our positions will be as it relates to our command staff and their support, our support, as they go out and do their job. Additionally, there's been conversations with the DA's office, and she has expressed her position on this question as well. And I think that as long as we continue to inform our officers on a level of due process through the DA's office and the support of this command staff, I think that we'll continue to reaffirm them that we can get beyond the issues of the past.
Tammy wants to know, what are your biggest takeaways from the last 9 months not related to COVID-19?
That's an interesting question. I'm hoping that I'm answering the question that you're asking. But I guess over the past 9 months, one of the things that we've recognized is the request for us to continue to build our staffing. Additionally, the number of weaponry that we see out on the streets and our ability to address that. And then working with the courts to make sure that we are able to take repeat offenders off of the street. Those are some of the biggest takeaways. And then I guess our issues that we see internally and externally as it relates to mental health.
Next question, Landon and others want to know, what are the biggest challenges that APD faces?
Much in line with the previous question, our biggest challenge, well, one of the biggest challenges I think that we face is as the city continues to grow, it is outpacing the growth of our police department, putting a greater demand on our resources. However, to ensure that we are working with many of our local partners to assist us in many of those efforts. And so I think that as we continue to reevaluate what we're doing in the background and recruitment phase of our department within our police department. At some point, we will catch up, but right now, that's probably our biggest challenge.
Kim wants to know, what can be done about the recidivism rate in Fulton County?
Good question. We're working with both the DA's office, our repeat offender office, and having conversations with the courts currently to address that with the assistance of the Atlanta Police Foundation, so that we can actually shore up what we're seeing as it relates to recidivism.
Kim also wants to know, do our officers have any input during court proceedings to emphasize there is an issue with repeat offenders?
That's actually done more so in the DA's office. We do get together a repeat offender file through our repeat offender officers unit to allow the courts to see what impact these repeat offenders are having on our community.
Jennifer wants to know, how can she help convince the shared Peachtree people that we need curb lanes for reasonable and safe access by all emergency vehicles?
Jennifer, I'm not quite clear on what, I don't know what you would, I don't know, that's a good question. Reasonable and safe access by all emergency vehicles. Right now, I can't say that we have a significant issue in the area because we continue to monitor it. There's not been an incident that we can say that it has been problematic thus far, but we are continuing to evaluate that process and what is happening in that space. And if something comes up, if there's an issue, then I guess we'll have to reevaluate it at that point. But right now, our response through that area has not been problematic.
Melissa asks, what is APD's annual community plan timeline? Has a community planning group been set up?
Not clear on this question either. We have, currently we work with almost every neighborhood planning unit through our zones. Our community service division has a robust plan where they go out to different communities and address many of the issues, and not just through our community service division, but through our FOD section as well, field operation division. They go out and work with the community on a regular basis. So I'm not clear on what the timeline would be. This is something that we do continuously. There's no actual timeline that exists.
The next set of questions are for Zone 5. Dion and others wants to know, what are the crime statistics for Zone 5 and what is being done to limit crime in our zone?
All right, so, excuse me, if you all can see the crime stats are posted on the slide. Every day, myself and Captain Clay study crime trends, we modify our efforts. At times, we will ask for both internal assistance from different resources we have and external resources. But we continue to modify our efforts where we try to put officers where we know that the crimes will possibly take place. In addition to that, we make sure that we continue to study those crime trends to make sure that we are in the correct places at all times.
Jennifer and Kevin wants to know, what level of patrol, community policing are you able to provide the COP, district, and hospitality corridor? How is APD improving the safety and security of downtown for convention attendees?
So that's a two-part question. So first, we work hand in hand with Georgia World Congress Police. They have the jurisdiction along the Centennial Olympic Park corridor. In addition to that, during large events and along the hospitality corridor, we do have a foot beat that's assigned in the hospitality district. We make sure that they are in those areas when we have large conventions. So we are consistently talking to the Center for Visitors Bureau to make sure any conventions that's coming in town, we study their logistics. And again, if we do realize that we need additional resources in a certain place, we will have those additional resources shifted into that space. for those particular conventions.
Nicole H. asks, where are the beat officers for Atlantic Station area?
So I'm not really sure that I understand the question, but where are the beat officers? They are consistently responding to 911 calls on 501's beat. It's a relatively large beat in the 501's area. They have a couple of different neighborhoods in that space, but Nicole, of course, we can arrange for you to meet the beat officers on all different shifts. We can make sure that you are aware of who they may be.
Lisa asks, what is the role of Midtown Blue concerning safety? I've asked them for help when being harassed or seeing someone in need, but they never help.
So Midtown Blue is a great supplement to the department. We love the partnership that we have with Midtown Blue, but it should not be understood that Midtown Blue is the police department, because they are not. If you are being harassed and you feel like you're in immediate danger, we encourage you to call 911. Midtown Blue does hire off-duty police officers, and most of them are from Zone 5, and they can assist. However, I would encourage you to call 911 first and then call Midtown Blue.
Jason asks, what can we do about the North Ave, Ponce de Leon, Piedmont intersection regarding homeless, streetwalkers, and drugs?
For the homeless and the streetwalkers, I need to be very clear that being homeless or walking along the street is not illegal. We make sure that we put the officers in the area that can offer various resources to our homeless individuals and our streetwalkers who may be suffering from, whether it be substance abuse, mental illness, or other issues that they may have. We make sure that they are provided those necessary resources. As far as the drug activity is concerned, we consistently place our field investigation team along with our proactive enforcement teams in those areas. They have done some details, and I will say what we're not very good at is we don't tell you how successful we have been in our details when we do them in those specific areas.
Deborah asks, do you have free home security devices for seniors over 75 years old?
No, unfortunately, we don't have any security devices at all that we can give out to anyone.
Bruce wants to know, how can we control the motorbikes and cruising on Travis Street adjacent to my business and the Trap House Museum?
Hey, Bruce. So I know we've talked about this 1,000 times, but definitely we have met with the Trap Museum, and I'm happy to report there has been a decline in activity compared to what you've seen previously. We know that those numbers have declined tremendously. We met with the Trap Museum owners, and we also encouraged them to take ownership of having the dirt bikes loiter in front of the location. That just wasn't a cool thing to do. And so we encourage them to step out and really move them along and not allow them to hang in that area as well. So of course, as always, if you do see them, it is illegal for them to operate on the streets, on the sidewalks. Please call 911.
And this is a two-part question. Mabel and others ask, when is the APD going to solve the drug trafficking, prostitution, traffic jam throughout the day and night at Jones Avenue and James P. Brawley Drive?
Hey, Ms. Mabel, very good question. For quite some time, we've seen that area, and it has been a challenging space for us to get into and just rid it completely of all crimes. But we have been doing some great work in that area as far as the drug activity. We have also requested the assistance of our Titans unit, who has also been in that area doing some drug enforcement. Again, you don't always see the officers when they're there, whether they're acting in an undercover capacity, but they are doing some great work in that area. In addition to that, the foundation, as you all know, have placed different officers who reside in that area, who are now also your neighbors, who will actually get out and do some great community police work. And they are also monitoring and reporting back and asking for different additional resources if necessary as well. So we should see a decline very soon, Ms. Megan.
Additionally, there are also concerns about prostitution on Myrtle Street and James P. Brawley's Drive Northwest between Joseph B. Boone and Proctor.
So yes, that's about the same answer to that. The field investigation team is there on a daily basis, and that's 7 days a week. And they are tackling those very same issues in that space.
The next set of questions are for Deputy Chief Timothy Peak. He's over the Field Operations Division. The Field Operations Division is the uniform patrol force of the city. Officers patrol the city streets, answer calls for service, and work with the community to solve trending problems. FOD consists of 6 geographic patrol zones and the night commander, who is the ranking supervisor during late night shifts. Will, Y, and others ask, what is being done about the increase in violent crime and crime rate? What is the current plan to fight the increase of vehicle larceny?
Good evening, Will, and all others. Again, this is Deputy Chief Timothy Peak with Atlanta Police Field Operations. So as we look specifically and talk about the violent crime, this answer really points back to one of the answers that Chief Bryant gave early on. When we look at our violent crime, we're always looking and studying the trends and finding out what's happening and where. What I'll say is that we have made an enormous amount of arrests in a lot of the areas where we find ourselves struggling. And so what we try to do is work closely with all of our law enforcement partners, be it federal, state, local, and county partners, looking and ensuring that we share information and build the strongest cases that we can submit to the court. Additionally, we are working with our repeat offender tracking unit to really and truly identify our problem people so that we can have again, better successful prosecution on those particular individuals. The other thing that we always do is we set up details quite frequently, actually, if not daily, weekly, as we have strategic enforcement details geared specifically for those specific crimes that we find, particularly as I look at the vehicle larcenies. The other ask that we have as we move forward with this process, we've made many arrests, and so while we continue to work on shoring up the issues and working together as a partner with the criminal justice system, we also look forward to the community policing. And I say this by community policing, us being able to an extent, police ourselves as we look at the stolen autos and the vehicle larcenies. The challenges that we continue to see is that people are parking cars and they're leaving them running with keys in the ignition. And unfortunately, people that are walking by are jumping in those cars, stealing them, and then turning around and using them for other crimes, such as larceny from autos and other issues that we're seeing. So what we really and truly ask of our citizens and our business communities is to partner with us from a community-oriented policing standpoint, and let's self-police that issue so that we don't have to use so many resources geared towards that to where we're chasing the same issue over and over again. We will continue to do those details as we're getting ready to lay out an additional to work and coincide with the fall plan. We're also working a vehicle larceny plan that we should be able to put into action coming up in the next week or two as well, that's on top of what we're already doing. So we recognize the issues and we're certainly working towards trying to alleviate and stop them.
Brandy wants to know, what positive statistics, accomplishments can we share with out-of-town guests traveling in with the misconception that Atlanta has a crime problem?
Randy, thank you for asking that, and that is a great question. One of the things that I will simply share is that we believe that Atlanta is a very safe city. When we talk about the crime, particularly violent crime that we've been facing, not just in the city of Atlanta, but across our country, the one thing that we're finding is that these incidents are taking place, 80% of these incidents are taking place with people who know each other, people who are, quite frankly, walking together, traveling together, and are finding themselves in disputes that are escalating into unfortunate incidents. Very rarely are we seeing the situations being involved with strangers. Not saying that it has not happened altogether, but that's the message that we really and truly want to share. We need people to have better conflict resolution avenues so that they don't escalate these issues. But as far as people coming to the city, we want people to come to Atlanta, those people that are coming for great purposes, enjoy the city, be smart about what you're doing, and be a good citizen and not contribute to some of the issues that are going on, but just to come and have a good time and partake of the great things that the city of Atlanta have to offer.
Before you move forward with that next question, Randy, you asked about what positive statistics and accomplishments you can share. You can always follow us on our social media platforms. There you can find positive stories that we post for the most part on a daily basis. Right now, we have a Faces of the Force that's up with one of our zone officers that you can share. So it will give people the opportunity to see what we do and who is working to keep you safe in the city of Atlanta. And Randy, this is Shata Spikes, Director of Public Affairs, and thank you for that question.
Kristen and Kevin wants to know, what actions can businesses and residents do to support the APD's efforts to curb crime in the metro area?
So, Kristen, Kevin, and everyone, again, these are great questions. What we ask from the business community as well as the residents is for number one, to be those good, nosy neighbors and great business partners. When we look at it, we would ask that everyone, to the extent, participate with the neighborhood watch businesses in the neighborhood watch area so that you, for number one, are actively involved with the neighborhoods and their meetings, sharing information and really and truly finding out what's happening and who's doing what. By doing that, I think it works better with APD so that everyone is receiving the same information and we're working together to curb the crime that's happening in Atlanta and the metro area. Additionally, we ask that each business and resident as well do an internal, what we call CEPTED, which meaning crime prevention through environmental design. We want you to look, and if you can't do it, we have our crime prevention inspectors that can come out to your location, take a look at your property, and really and truly make recommendations that will, for number one, fortify and enhance and make your business or resident safer for all, so that no one will be able to come in and really and truly victimize you. By doing that, working comprehensively together, getting involved with the NPUs, we think that we can really and truly turn the leap on that and we'll have a safer city.
Tramilla and Christina wants to know, what are some safety tips you can provide to help prevent violent crimes?
So very similar to the previous question, when we talk about safety tips, we really and truly want people to, for number one, when you're coming out, being aware of your surroundings. Always know where your keys are when you're going from a location to a vehicle. Always looking and ensuring that when you can, travel with groups. It doesn't mean that a single person can't go out to do what they need to do, but we just believe that it's always great to know, regardless to where you are, what's happening in your surroundings. Again, we also look at situations such as lighting to ensure that there's adequate lighting in your areas. If you have the availability of adding cameras, and this goes back to the previous question as well, adding cameras, tying them into our video integration center so that you are partnering with the city and we're creating a larger security network in your footprint so that ultimately whatever happens, we have police officers that will have the information that's needed right at their fingertips to really and truly move on stuff when it happens. So ultimately just partnering with us in every way imaginable. Of course, if you see something, say something and let us know when things are happening. And we ask people, to the extent that you can, when you see things going on, do not take it on yourself to try to stop that situation, but call 911 and give us the pertinent information, stay on the line so that we can dispatch an officer and update that person while they're en route to you to intercept whatever that issue's going on.
Deirdre asks, are there any tips you can provide regarding scooter safety?
Yes, absolutely. Scooter safety is a great topic. First and foremost, we ask for those that are riding scooters to wear helmets, and if there are other safety things that you can put on your body to keep you from being injured, please do so. The other thing we would like for you to do is to become familiar with the laws of the road. Scooters are made to ride actually on the street as opposed to the sidewalk. So what that means is that you need to be also aware with the normal rules of the uniform rules of the road. So when you come into crosswalks, stop signs, red lights, you need to abide by the same laws that vehicular traffic would abide by, so that you're not running out in front of vehicles and being injured. So by doing that, other things we would like for you to do is to wear reflective gear. If you can, flashing lights, whatever it is, road guard vest, to make yourselves known. So when you're riding in your late evening, even or daytime, people will be able to see you better and be able to maneuver around you, and we'll be able to reduce the number of accidents we're having in regards to pedestrian and scooter incidents.
The next set of questions are for Deputy Chief Charles Hampton, who is not here today, but in his place, we have Major William Ricker. The Criminal Investigations Division, known as CID, consists of investigative units whose primary responsibility is to investigate and follow up on crimes committed against persons or property in the city of Atlanta. Dominic and Rob ask, what is the latest on the Piedmont Park incident involving Katie Janice, and why has there been no update in over a month?
Well, the investigation is still actively being worked by our homicide investigators, and tips still coming in weekly from the public. In reference to why there's not updates out in the public concerning that, if it's an open homicide investigation, that stays internal. We want successful prosecution in the end.
Rob wants to know, are there any Midtown gangs we should be concerned about and any associated bolos to share?
So I'll take this kind of in two parts. So there's no Midtown gangs, but there are gangs that operate in Midtown. Gangs in general are looking for wealth, and they're doing that by either stealing cars, stealing from cars, or robbery. One of our biggest concerns is our rideshare folks and our delivery drivers leaving their vehicles unattended and still with a key in it. So that kind of breeds that criminal element of gangs moving into those areas.
And Victoria wants to know, what can be done to stop shootings, given the awfully lax state gun law in Georgia?
So Atlanta Police Department doesn't have anything to do with how gun laws are created in Georgia. What I will say is we've had a large problem of people leaving guns in vehicles. We've had over 1,500 weapons taken from inside vehicles in Atlanta so far this year. Those weapons usually end up in the hands of juveniles and gang members. Their decision-making is usually poor. Some of the ways that in general people can just help stop from getting to that point is talk to our young people. Make them understand that they need to take a little more time and talk out disputes than all of a sudden moving to violence.
The next set of questions are for the Community Service Division that will be answered by Major Eddie Smith. The Community Services Division, CSD, encompasses units that are directly responsible for coordinating and facilitating community-oriented policing principles, Atlanta Airport police functions, and special operations. Paul and Randy wants to know, how is the initiative to reduce street racing going, and has there been an increase in street racing in Zone 5?
First of all, it's a good question. I'll let Chief Bryant, he can evaluate how well we're doing with the street racing. But I tell you, we've done a lot of research and getting into a good place in dealing with street racing activities. Has it decreased in Zone 5? The organized events, yes, but the spontaneous events still pop up from time to time. One element that has been very instrumental in helping us to maintain and limit these type of activities is going to be our in-house intel. We have Lieutenant Harris, my high-intensity traffic team commander, Lieutenant Hunt, Phoenix commander, along with officer and pilot, Officer Treadwell. We continue to monitor the local street racing organizers throughout the city. We also partner with metro agencies to include Georgia State Patrol. So it put us in a good place now. I can pull my high intensity traffic team and other SOS units in other locations in the city where we can do some crime fighting. But we'll continue to work diligently. The in-house intelligence allow us to do three things. We can track them in real time. We have real-time information we can share with our partners and vice versa. And also it allows us to be efficient and effective with the use of our personnel. And we also allow us to go back prior to them coming into the city, other locations, we can go to their location and let them know that we know. And that's also been a great deterrent for us. And after they come into the city, if there's any infractions or laws that were broken, we're able to obtain warrants and go to their house, knock on the door, and we can place individuals on arrest at that time. But we will continue to monitor and work this the street racing detail accordingly.
Okay, the next question is a two-part question. Mark and others ask, what solutions are being considered for obnoxious and extreme car exhaust noises? And then he also asks, can anything be done about loud speeding cars in the areas of Piedmont Park, Ponce de Leon Ave, and the Howell Mill corridor between 17th and 10th Street in particular?
Yeah, another good question. Something that we've been working on diligently throughout the section. 40-8-71, that's some code section for a loud muffler and exhaust. I was just talking to my motors and my high intensity traffic unit about that earlier today. It's something that we wrote that citation well over 100 times this year. It's something that we have to continue to stay on top of, not only during our street racing and late night events, but throughout the day. Dealing with and to get on to address Piedmont Park, Ponce de Leon Avenue, and Howell Mill corridor. We have my motor section there during the day to deal with some of the 18-wheeler trucks that we get complaints for having some traffic congestion on the Howell Mill corridor. But when it comes to Ponce de Leon and Piedmont Park, my high intensity traffic unit has been there for roughly 3 to 4 weeks. Pulled them out last week and we had to deal with some loud muffler and street racing along Lenox Road and the on-ramp to 400. And that's something we will continue to battle. And if you can email me directly, ersmith@atlantaga.gov, we'll ensure that we have some enforcement out there going forward. We'll update you accordingly.
Sharon and others, and this is a three-part question, they want to know, what is the status of homeless population in Atlanta? And what do you recommend we do when we encounter a homeless individual? What if we have concerns about panhandling? And then also, what resources are available to the homeless community? Okay,
well, let's deal with dealing with the homeless individual, panhandling. If you're approached by a homeless individual that's aggressive, de-escalate that to the best of your ability. If that doesn't work, call 911 and then we'll take over the situation from that point. One thing dealing with the homeless population, dealing with resources that we have a very good HOPE and COPS unit. These individuals, they work consistently and dedicated in dealing with the homeless to try to mitigate some of the homeless problems in the city. They're highly trained to deal with the homeless and they have a vast experience of dealing with them daily also. We partner with several organizations, nonprofit churches, local churches in the city, and we also pattern with our team and we offer and render services to the homeless. Once they're in this service, they're vetted, and if they complete the service, they are offered jobs and housing, but they have to complete the service. We cannot force them. We can recommend it frequently over numerous of times. One thing about our HOPE and our COPS unit, they are relentless at constantly going out and getting these people back in these programs when the opportunity presents itself. But it's a constant ongoing problem that we continue to look at it going forward.
Dan wants to know, how can we request parking enforcement?
Through me. You can email me directly, ersmith@atlantaga.gov. We have one of the best motor units, not only in the state, but throughout the country. They work tirelessly at doing traffic enforcement. So send that to me, I'll forward that out to their lieutenant. We have a great mounting unit. They also in that space. They also write traffic enforcement and traffic citations. So send that to me and we'll document those locations. We'll get them down there immediately.
Jennifer asked, what would it take to beef up code enforcement, public health, public safety pertaining to vacant and derelict, buildings?
Well, first of all, code enforcement, another good unit. They work hard every day. They going out and renting those services, especially when they come to the code enforcement throughout the city to include vacant homes. Most vacant homes should be registered within the city system, and they should also be boarded up and to the standards that's presented through our code enforcement. Now, when it comes to dilapidated property, that's a little more problematic. It takes more time to work those. But what I would suggest is that you have properties that you think that should belong on that list. You want to verify that, you can email code enforcement. And they have a great major over there, and Brian Schiffbauer, you can email him directly also, he'll follow up.
Dan asks, will APD Zone 5 enforce the city's cease and desist order for STR operators, short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, and home park?
Yes, short-term rentals that fall under license and permits, that they tasked to handle those type of incidents. When it comes, if they're going to be a large-scale detail, I'm quite sure they'll reach out to Zone 5 units for assistance. We want to make sure that we have enough officers, investigators on hand to work those problems efficiently and effectively.
Elizabeth asks, what is the status of the due process package against Republic?
The process, Republic, I think that's being appealed. It's still in the court system, may be appealed through Fulton County Superior Court, but we will continue to monitor them going forward.
Elizabeth also wants to know, what is the status of Compound's revoked certificate of occupancy?
For right now, it's revoked. And the same thing, we will continue to monitor them going forward until they get back into a status where they can get that appeal. We continue to monitor them going forward.
The next set of questions are for SSD with Chief Stacy Gibbs. The Support Services Division, SSD, provides administrative and logistical support to all divisions in the Atlanta Police Department. The division includes corporate services and the training academy. Courtney asks, please provide 2 actions Midtown residents can take immediately to help support the active recruitment of more officers and retaining today's officers.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you so much for asking this question, and thank you in advance for your support of our hiring efforts. First of all, I want to encourage you to please like our social media, which I'm sure you have, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and then please ask all your friends, neighbors, colleagues to do the same. Have them like it, have them go on and read about what we're doing. And then I also want to tell you that now that we're beginning to slowly come out of the pandemic, we have really begun to see an increase in our recruiting efforts, and that's been thanks to a lot of different entities. But just so you'll have an idea of some of what we're doing, tomorrow we're going to Clemson University, and that's one of our initiatives. We've reached out to over 220 separate colleges, and of course that includes all of the colleges and universities in the metro area and in the state. We are working closely with some of the military bases to help out when soldiers are finishing up their tour of duty. We're partnering with them so that when they come out, they will have a job with us. We're also really focusing, because we love to hire from within the city and from within the metro area. We've been having a lot of pop-up events where we'll actually go into the community. Maybe it's a coffee shop. We've done some 5Ks. We went to some parks, because obviously we love to hire people that live here. And then secondly, I would just ask that when you see an officer out, and I'm sure you do, if you'll just go up and let that officer know that you appreciate him. You know, we really stress to our officers that the best people, for us are people that they help bring to us. So if you'll just continue to show your support to them, that will go a long way in our recruitment efforts.
Harold and Kristen ask, what are the department staffing levels at this time? And do we have more recruits coming?
So I'm gonna give you a combined staffing level, and that's gonna be our sworn personnel, and it's going to be our professional staff, and I'll explain why. First of all, our sworn personnel is going to be 1,703, and then we have an additional 455 professional staff. And what I mean by professional staff is that will be our non-sworn members. But these people are just as important to our crime fighting efforts. This is going to include our crime scene, our 911, our crime lab, our code enforcement who goes out for your short-term rentals, our license and permits, which addresses some of your clubs like Compound. Now, those units do have sworn and professional, but the professional staff go out in partnership with them. So our combined efforts right now for crime fighting is 2,158.
Tammy wants to know, how many of your officers have gone through the new training at CCHR, the Center for Civil and Human Rights, and what kind of feedback have they provided about the training?
Just one second, Tammy. Harold and Kristen, I apologize. You had a second part to your question. We have 93 total recruits right now. 59 of those recruits are in training. 34 are waiting to go to training. We have one class that is going to be sworn in, and they will begin their permanent assignments on Thursday. We have another class which will be sworn in and go out to their field training in October. We have a third class that's just recently started on September 9th, and we are preparing for a fourth class to start on October. I also wanted to stress, again, as it relates to our hiring efforts, that we have hired 69 recruits year to date, but in the past 2 months, that has really picked up. In fact, I forwarded up 6 final hires today to Assistant Chief Coit and Chief Bryant, and our numbers just continue to grow. So I wanted to share that.
I'm sorry about that, I can reread the question. Tammy H asked, how many of your officers have gone through the new training at the CCHR, the Center for Civil and Human Rights, and what kind of feedback have they provided about the training?
Okay, yes, Tammy. So we have had a total of 599 of our personnel complete the process. Now, 469 of these have included our recruits, our officers, and our investigators. And then an additional 130 are supervisors who have completed the 3-day training. Our goal is to have all of our current sworn personnel complete the training by February of 2022. And then going forward, once we train each recruit class, which we always do while they are in the academy, we will be able to keep the entire department trained. It has been very beneficial, and we have received excellent feedback from our officers. Thank you for asking.
The next set of questions will be answered by the Director, Desiree Arnold, who is over the E911 division. She's actually with us virtually. Bob C. asked, when should we call 911? How are 911 calls prioritized?
911 calls should be used for emergency situations that require a police, a fire, or a medical response. Some examples of those would be a fire, if there's a crime, especially if it's in progress, a vehicle accident, or a medical emergency. When you do call 911, please be prepared to answer the call taker's questions. Those questions may include, they'll ask you the location of the emergency, preferably a street address or intersection, the nature of the emergency, and then they'll start to ask you details about what happened or who's involved. They may ask for physical descriptions, vehicles involved in the incident, what types of injuries or symptoms a person may be experiencing, direction of travel if the person has left the scene, and also an approximate time that the incident occurred. All of those questions tie into prioritizing calls. So higher priorities are always given to calls that involve injuries, the severity of the incident. So if there's a person shot, of course, that call would take precedence over a noise complaint. The location of the perpetrator. When we ask that information, that determines the priority. If they're still on the scene or if there's any possibility of apprehending them, then that would increase the priority. And of course, the timeline. Any calls that just occurred or are in progress will receive a higher priority. Hopefully that answered that question.
Nicole and Deborah wants to know, how are we addressing the delay in 911 response times? How can we obtain data about 911 response times in our area?
Okay, so currently our center receives roughly 3,000 calls a day. So delays in call answer times occur for a different number of reasons. Some of those reasons do include staffing. We do receive influxes of calls during a period of time, especially if there is inclement weather. And then we also receive an influx of non-emergency calls. So calls that should be routed to 311 or 511, or sometimes the callers will call here first. So to address the staffing issue this year, we've hired 35 new employees. We have 8 in the hiring process, and the position remains open on atlantagA.gov. Currently, we have 25 open positions, which include 18 additional positions that we requested, and they were approved at the beginning of the year. We're also upgrading our phone system. So unfortunately, the current phone system does not recognize nor separate callers calling 911 from those calling the non-emergency line. So basically, whether you call 911 or you call the 666 number, they all go into the same queue, and the system does not separate them and give us 911 calls first. So we're upgrading the phone system. This upgrade will automatically place 911 callers ahead of non-emergency callers and give the call taker the ability to triage calls and place them on hold if it's determined that that caller does not have an emergency. This will allow the call takers to answer calls that may be in a holding queue more quickly, as they will not have to handle a complete non-emergency call before answering the calls in the holding queue. This phone system is slated for upgrade at the end of the year. And we're also currently working to implement new technology that will allow alarm companies to enter alarm calls directly into our computer system without making a phone call into our 911 center. Our center currently receives well over 50,000 calls from alarm companies each year. And this technology is slated for implementation within the next 3 to 4 weeks. So those are the things that we're doing to address the delay in response time. I wasn't clear on the question about the data about 911 response times. If you mean dispatch to arrival, then of course those stats can be received through any member of the command staff as well as myself. I did pull the stats for September to present, and the emergency response time for the zone was 8 minutes and 33 seconds. I'm not sure if the person that was asking the question said in our area meant the zone or their beat, but if you can ask that question in the chat or send me an email, dyarnold@atlantagA.gov, I'll be more than happy to assist you with it.
The next question is for Major Maurice Bates, who is over OPS, which is the Office of Professional Standards. Dorothy wants to know, how long does it take to get a response on a formal complaint?
Good evening, Ms. Dorothy. Thank you all for this time and allowing us to answer your questions. Complaints will be completed within 180 days, unless there are some circumstances that extend, such as a complex investigation on which we're waiting for information from the DA's office or court disposition, or if individuals on military leave or FMLA, then those files may take longer to conclude, in which time that file will be placed in an inactive status. At the conclusion of the investigation, the individual making the complaint will receive a written response from our office indicating the findings. And after the file has been closed, it is accessible by open records.
The next question is for the Public Affairs Unit. Director Shada Spikes is here to answer that question. Holly wants to know, what is your strategy for better informing local media about the true happenings within the zone?
And so this is Sergeant John Chafee. I'm going to go ahead and take that question. I work in the Public Affairs Office, and part of what we do is we host events like this, but we also, probably the main focus of our unit is to provide the media with information on what's going on in the city. Pretty much what happens is they will reach out about an incident, we'll provide them information on it, and we do try to be proactive about some of what our efforts are throughout the city and share that with them as well. I would encourage you to follow us on social media. We do post information on there, and also look us up on our website. There's a news tab on there, and we post a lot of the statements that we provide media on there. We cannot dictate to them what they put on the news. We'll provide them with a statement, and often they will take bits and pieces of that to put in their news story. If you want to see the whole statement that was provided to them, again, go to our website and take a look at that. But it can be a little bit tricky because, you know, we don't tell them what they put on the news. We try to provide them with as much information as we can about incidents, and then a lot of it falls into their hands to see what they put on the news. There are also going to be, in many circumstances, if it's an open investigation, there's a lot of information that we cannot share. We want to make sure that we don't affect that investigation in a negative way. So we're going to be careful about what information is put out there. So there are going to be times where you see a crime occur and you're not going to see a lot of information put out there, but there is a reason behind that beyond, it's not just that we don't want to share it. It's, we want to make sure that we have successful prosecutions with these cases. You know, we take them very seriously. We know that it affects you guys. We want to make sure that it's taken seriously, and we do everything that we can to have a successful prosecution on that. So that's a lot of the reason why we don't provide a lot of details on some of these investigations.
All right, everyone, this is Shada Spikes, Director of Public Affairs. Now we're going to move into the question portion where you all have placed questions in the chat. I'm going to read them and also provide the name of the person who responded. But before I do that, I want to make sure that you are aware that members of Midtown Blue, representatives from Midtown Blue, are on this call, as well as Denise White from PAD, which is pre-arrest diversion, which is an alternate option outside of arresting people. So I just want to make sure that you all are aware that they are on. If there are any members of City Council who are on, please just raise your hand just so we can acknowledge you. But at the end of this, if we have time, we will allow you to ask questions verbally. But for right now, I can tell you that I have a long list of questions that have been submitted, so I won't waste any more time. I will get straight to it. The first question is from Harvey Mueller. The increase in street noise from loud vehicles and bikes has been tremendous in the last year. For those of us in Midtown, this is unbearable at times. There seems to be no police action to reduce street noise. Can we count on the Atlanta police to help reduce street noise?
Yes, Major Smith, Special Operations. Matter of fact, we just received a complaint last week, Tuesday. Gave that complaint to my high intensity traffic team, and we pulled them out of a location. They spent 4 days on that Lennox Road entrance ramp onto 400, where we made significant cases. Now, we talking about this is not an organized group when it comes to these loud mufflers and exhaust, but that's something we have to continue and diligently work at citing these individuals. All we can do is notify us real time, whether it's 911, email me, and I get the email out to my appropriate units at that time, so we can at least have a few units to respond to certain locations to assist you in real time.
This next question, Lowell Pratt, you asked about Piedmont Park. We've already answered that question, but I just want everyone to know if you put a question in the chat and we've answered it, I won't be repeating it for the sake of time. Lowell has another question that says, I've seen a significant increase in homeless people on the streets in Midtown. What are the factors that are increasing the homelessness issue, and what is being done to address it? How can Midtown residents be a part of solutions?
Yes, well, like I say, code enforcement, our whole team, we're in the area. All we ask is if you see something, you witness it immediately, you can reach out to us and we'll have a unit to respond. And we'll offer them services that through local churches, nonprofits, and other organizations to try to get them the help they need. But that's all we can do at this time. We can't force that help.
Dana asks, can Midtown Blue deal with illegal parkers on Peachtree Street, the Uber Eats drivers?
Marcus is actually on, but I know for a fact that his team does go out and assist all the time with moving people along. I myself have seen the Uber drivers, they're there 1 second, they're gone the next, you circle a block. It got so bad at one point, we put one officer right in front of 1080 Peachtree because we were experiencing so many slaughter crimes in that space. But Marcus, do you wanna chime in?
Absolutely. Good evening, and thank you for letting us participate. As Midtown Blue, Midtown Alliance, we are very active in that corridor, trying to make sure it stays clear. Anytime we stop a detail or not as active, it starts right back and gets terrible. There's many reasons for us being active and out there. Right now, we have written over 1,450 citations and approximately 5,000 warnings between our public safety officers and our Midtown Blue APD officers that work that area. It's not just Peachtree Street. There's other streets we're active on, but we're always trying to curb that. It's just continuous. A lot of the stolen cars that are running parked illegally from Peachtree Street, as well as other streets in that general area, that's one of the main reasons we tried to be more active recently and tried to curb that to stop the stolen vehicles, because that's kind of getting out of hand in Midtown for our property crimes. And we try to curb that as much as possible, working with APD.
So this next question is from Alicia Newman. Alicia is asking, will we elaborate on what services Midtown Blue provides? Marcus, if you don't mind, if you can respond to Alicia Newman in the chat, that would be great. And we'll move on to the next question. But Marcus, can you give us an email address where Alicia can contact you or a member of Midtown Blue?
Absolutely, we will. And it's about a 3-minute answer, so I'll put a short tag.
Couldn't hear the end of that, Marcus, but if you can just reach out to her on the chat. She has a very nice picture wearing a black suit and a white blouse, if you can reach out to Alicia Newman. All right, next question. Any comment on drug situations on the steps of Ponce Presbyterian Church? Also, the Chevron on Ponce and Piedmont is out of control. Do the owners of the properties have responsibility to provide security? This question is from Jennifer Hammer.
So normally what we try to do in that space is try to meet with the owners to allow them the opportunity to correct what we're seeing. Honestly speaking, I know that we've had a lot of issues with some of the streetwalkers and homeless individuals and some prostitution in that space. I kind of spoke about it earlier. We do have the field investigation team really aggressively targeting those locations to address some of the concerns. But the owners, that would be a code enforcement issue that we can definitely look into.
All right, this next question is from David Ryo. There's been a lot of activities near 11th Street Pub. I can see at least one patrol car stationed with the lights on near the pub almost every day for the last 2 weeks. Is it something we, as a Midtown resident, have to worry about?
No, that's the officer doing exactly what he's been instructed to do, just making sure that we can deter some of the criminal activity that we're seeing in that space, whether it be the car break-ins or the auto thefts and slaughter crimes.
All right, Will, you have a question about staffing for sworn as well as 911. We did take care of that. We did answer that question already, so I'm going to move on to the next question, and that will be Ron Burns. We did address Piedmont Park. And let's see, can WGCC police help to patrol downtown?
GWCC, they can patrol where their jurisdiction is, and they have the Congress Center as well as Centennial Olympic Park Drive. But outside of that, they're very limited to where they can go, as their jurisdiction does have limitations.
Has anyone ever gotten a ticket for riding in the paid scooters on the sidewalk? I like to see those statistics. I almost get run over at Piedmont on the regular.
So yes, there have been citations. I don't have them readily available to report. You can email me, but I will say that it is very difficult for the officers to go out. When the officers do try to stop individuals on scooters, I mean, literally the officers almost get ran over. Then in addition to that, we don't want the officer to create a situation where they now are placing a scooter rider in danger and knocking them off the scooter as well. So we have to be very strategic in the way that we do the enforcement with the scooters, but I'll be more than happy to share. If you could just email me your question, I'll get back with you.
All right, that question came from Nick Allen. This next question comes from Elise Johnson. Hello, I would like to know what you guys are doing to help us on Jet and Elm Street. It is now taken over by drugs, prostitution, and crime. She would like for someone to call her, but her question is, what can you do to help?
So again, that's a space that we have everybody, the Titans, the field investigation team, and as well as our other officers. We know that it is a challenging space. Just when we think we have control over it, we see another situation arise from it. So please email me your contact information. I'll be more than happy to share information with you.
All right, this question comes from Mark Cooper. How does APD develop the balance between prevention and deterrence versus investigation after the fact, i.e. camera systems?
So, I'm Deputy Chief Peak. What we're doing on those particular situations, naturally, as we look at the response from an operational standpoint, we will always put the necessary resources in those footprints to deal with the deterrence of the crime, but recognizing that you can't put a particular police officer at a location forever, we recognize that there will be some crimes going forward, and so for that balance, we certainly rely upon our Criminal Investigations Division to support, and the other divisions within APD, such as the Community Services Division, for proactive patrols. So us working all together collectively, we think we have a great balance, and you will see that with the high percentages that we constantly have with our investigations and clear-ups. But we recognize that it's certainly one of those things that we spoke of earlier about how we look collectively at the criminal justice system so that we slow that repeat offender issue down so that we're able to be more successful with keeping the right people off the street and providing resources to those that actually need it. I hope that helps the question.
All right. We're getting a lot of questions that are coming in, and I'm having to doggle through some of the questions because they are repeat. So if you all don't mind, bear with me. And if there is a repeat question that we've answered and we need to address it to a certain person, we will do that. This next question is from Chris Denise. Can you comment on the rise of crime-centric social media accounts like ATL Scoop? It appears to be creating more fear about crime in general, while also encouraging bystanders to circumvent 911. So for that question, that would fall into my area, which is public affairs. As it relates to ATL Scoop, we have worked to form relationships with some of these social media platforms and outlets so that they can share crime prevention information. However, because of the devices that we all have, everyone feels that they're a reporter, and social media is a major driver for popularity, and people want to say that they can have bragging rights to say that they were the first ones to see a crime take place. Like I said before, we are working with these various outlets to ask them to share our information and to encourage them to encourage their followers to reach out to 911 and APD versus immediately picking up their phone to shoot a video. Instead, we ask that they pick up their phone and dial 911 if they are the witness to a crime. All right, next question. All right, some of these are just comment. Most responses refer to tickets issued. What percentage of those are adjudicated? This is from Jennifer Hammer.
That's a core question.
Jennifer, that would have to be directed to the courts. This question is from Dorothy Hurst. Can we prioritize license and permits getting some kind of software that allows citizens to provide complaints they see, and those complaints can be sent to the officers?
So we are always evaluating technology as it relates to not just license and permit, but throughout the department. Clearly, when we see that there's something that needs to be elevated, we work with the mayor's office to do just that. I don't know if we've identified any technology through the department and AIM that will get us in the space that we need to be, but we're always looking at it. So in short, absolutely. We recognize that licenses and permits is an area that has garnered a lot of attention and needs a lot of attention. And as soon as we can get something that aligns with our system, we'd be glad to implement it.
Nick Allen asks, who do I call when, for example, cars are parked literally on the sidewalk, regularly blocking foot traffic as well as handicap traffic? That's not 311 and it's not an emergency. Who should he call?
He needs to call 911. That's the way the officers are dispatched. Once we're out there, you can also call 311 if it's during their normal hours, and ATO Plus will respond. But other than that, it needs to be 911, and we'll have an officer to respond accordingly.
Mark Cooper asks, what zones will the recruits be assigned to?
So,
Go ahead.
so Mark, what we do when we have our assessment of where we need to deploy our officers, generally, they will have us sprinkled in every zone depending on what's happening. But we certainly, depending on where that zone's resources are, we look at that from a holistic basis throughout the entire city.
Jennifer Hammer asks, any comment on the 911 response time? I was recently on hold for over 2 minutes. Have also experienced operators being dismissive of the situation. Director Arnold, can you address that question?
Chief not on the call anymore.
I'll take that.
Chief Coy?
Director Arnold, this is Assistant Chief Coy. Director Arnold was working and she had to go and speak with a Citizens Police Academy class that was visiting the E911 center. The complaint or the issue with the slow response time, I believe the person said 2 minutes. That's something that we look at consistently on a daily and a shift basis. If that person can email myself or Director Arnold, we can look more deeply into it, but that's something we consistently look into. Director Arnold spoke earlier stating that when people have issues or incidents that they're calling in on, please don't hang up. I'll give you an example. If there's a traffic accident, and for one traffic accident, we can have 30 people call in for that one traffic accident, and that will make the queue grow extra long, where the call takers and the dispatchers have to process through all of those calls. Sometimes it makes the response time a little bit long. But again, if you will give me a call or give me an email, I can look into it, or Director Arnold can look more deeply into that issue.
Mark Cooper asks, how do those APD recruit numbers relate to the 250 additional officers Mayor Bottoms commented a few months ago?
You have the specific number. So the numbers that the mayor asked us, the 250 was for the between our fiscal year of July to next July. So we have a year. What we are doing is calculating how many we get per month from that number. Right now, we're ahead of our tracking point. I think we have hired over 46 since then. As a matter of fact, the number was 48. We hired 48, our number was 45, and that's not counting the numbers that Chief Gibbs just announced here earlier today. So we're ahead, we're tracking ahead that we should hit the number 250 if we don't have any unforeseen incidents.
Nick Allen asked, ordinance doesn't mean anything when I watch at least twice a week a very loud car barrel down the road in full view and earshot of a police cruiser that is doing nothing but sitting at a light.
Yeah, same thing when it comes to loud muffler. We all have to do our part, not only a high intensity traffic unit and our motors unit, but it's going to be a problem that we need to tackle throughout the whole department. But if it's something that's ongoing, reach out to me over at Special Operations and we'll assist the best. We have units out there to assist.
This question is also related to loud mufflers from Jason Wright. He asks, maybe there's the possibility of having noise emission inspections as well as air and environmental inspections. I believe that would be something that the state would have to require, not at the local level. That would be something, Jason, that you would have to talk to your state representative about. So the time is 7:13. It looks as if though I've gone through all of the questions. I have some comments here left from Harvey Mueller. I'm not going to read those aloud, but we will open up the Zoom for you all to ask questions. And we only have time for a few questions because we are slated to end at exactly 7:30. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Don't unmute until you are acknowledged. So we have one from, it says it's a couple sitting. If you can unmute.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. My
Please.
name is Naveen Rupali and my wife is here. We have a property at Peachtree on Metropolis. We have a problem with the tenant who has been, we have filed a case against them and a judge has signed for eviction, which has been more than 2 months, is still not going. And they are doing a lot of illegal activity, which makes it Metropolis resident to be problem. So we getting charged by HOA almost more than $10,000 to $15,000 fine, which we never wanted to do that. And this guy does a lot of illegal activities, including like loud music, smoking marijuana, and he comes inside the unit where he goes, he does not have a fob, like it is a whole secure system, really.
So he's stealing the numbers in the elevator and public urination.
He urinates in the elevator and indecent show inside the whole Metropolis. So we are trying to, we have even 2 attorneys for us working, but there is nothing they can do, and we want a police department to help us if you can.
Major Span is going to address your question.
Yeah, so what we can do is if you can just put your contact information in the chat, I'll be sure to follow up with you and provide any tips that I can. But it sounds like right now you probably need to still try to go through your attorney. I know it's tough right now because there's still a pandemic, and we've had a couple of civil cases like this in the courts already this year. Honestly speaking, the police department's hands are really tied when it comes to civil matters as such. But anything that we can provide you with contact information for marshal's office or court, civil court, we can try to assist you that way.
Thank you.
We are waiting for marshal's date.
Marshal's date, it has not been, we calling them, but there is no response. They say you just have to wait. And we trying our, we calling and see if they can, because of this tenant who I'm worried that will cause more issue and some safety issue to the people, you know. And he's not the one who is supposed to be in our lease. He's like a trespasser,
Yeah,
but he has a key.
We'll follow up with you, just in the sake of time, I'll follow up with you, just make sure you put your contact information in the, chat box, we can have a conversation.
In the chat box, that's what I should do?
Okay,
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have who has their raised hand is Dorothy Hurst. Ms. Hurst?
So I want to kind of follow up on the question that I asked. And it was the one that dealt with license and permits. In Zone 5, we have the most nuisance properties, and we have probably the most clubs, specifically downtown, Castleberry Hill, dealing with all of these issues with nuisance properties, these so-called restaurant clubs. Now, there are two things. We got ordinance that we need to revise in Chapter 10 that'll get us there. But until we get there, license and permits has got to basically get out there and work the ordinance that we have. The problem, Chief, is that everyone that sends information sends it in email. And it is not the way they need to be doing business. It breeds lack of success. And you said something about software that aligns with your systems. Your current systems are already out of date, so you can't be buying software that aligns with out-of-date systems. So we have got to look at what we can do to make license and permits better and put some technology in their hands so they can get out and do their job better.
Thank you, but absolutely, Ms. Hurst, that's exactly what we're trying to do. But any technology that we buy, anything that we do, we have to go through our Ames department. We cannot do it alone. We can't go it alone. Since our cyber attack, they will not allow the police department to advance any level of technology that could possibly corrupt our system. So I know it's an arduous task, and it doesn't sound well, but it's just where we are. But if anything that we are always looking to improve our technology and our capabilities as it relates to license and permits. That's something that it's not falling on deaf ears. It's just a matter of us being able to get the right processes in place to address it.
All right, everyone, we have time for a few more questions. It's about 7:20. We have about 10 minutes. If there are any other questions, please raise your hand and I will acknowledge you. And to raise your hand, use the reaction button, and there's an option to raise your hand and it'll pop up and I'll see it. If having none, we will close this meeting out with final remarks from our Chief Bryant.
Folks, thank you all for taking this time to share your concerns and share your questions and listening to our response. Again, we cannot do this alone. We need you to be able to share your ideas, your thoughts, and the things that we don't see. I know that it takes time to do this, and so that is very much appreciated that you are taking the time to share with us. So as always, from the Atlanta Police Department, on behalf of Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, thank you for your support.
Thank you. Good night.